Hi, this is Little Dwarf playing games while rambling incoherently into a microphone. Why? Just because I can, and I continue with Werewolf the Apocalypse, Heart of the Forest, Blind. Now, last episode, I, that being Maia, and my friend Ania, arrived in Białowieża, in Poland, and apparently we're just ready to go to bed because my willpower is zero and I'm tired. So, Białowieża had a few hotels and hostels, but the preferred form of accommodation was bed and breakfast. That's where we stayed. I found one that was nice, clean, and had good reviews. We had a room on the second floor with a huge window and a great view of the forest. We dropped off our stuff and refreshed up a bit. Maybe we should have waited for your friend, Anya asked, concerned. I shrugged. I'll find him, sooner or later. Now, okay, again, I don't really understand her. It was her who asked me to leave because she wanted to go and find the toilet. Why don't we return even now? Or why didn't I stay and wait for her to to finish her business, as it were, and then come back? And if she didn't care about the friend, then why is she coming back to that topic now? I find it kind of incoherent. Before you go, check out your character sheet. Look for it in the upper right corner of the screen. You can find a lot of useful information about Maia, her background, personality, goals, and so on there. You can also check with your friends and who your enemies are. Białowieża was a quaint tourist town. To be honest, I'm not sure Białowieża is that much of a tourist town. I believe if anyone visits the region, it's not for the town. It's specifically for the national park. But let me check the character sheet. So apparently, my name is Maja Borodicz, which this is an anglicized version of the surname. I believe it would be, probably in Polish, it would be Borodicz, written as ICZ, because Ch, that being C and Z, is a very prominent Polish diphthong. But her family changed their surname when they emigrated to the States because it was much easier for the Americans to pronounce it when it's written this way, which is very common with a lot of Polish surnames. If you look at people who have Polish ancestry, they often have their surnames slightly changed, or they keep their original Polish surnames, but nobody pronounces them the way they would in Poland. For example, John Krasinski, they call him John Krasinski, but in Polish it's softer. It's Krasiński. So I'm 24. I'm a student from America. I'm not that brave, but I am kind of inspiring, kind of analytical, and rather spiritual. I have impaired willpower. My goal is to learn my family history. I have to pursue it to regain willpower. Anya is sympathetic to me. And my family? Well, it's complicated, apparently. Anya, Maya's friend from the university. She came from Norway, a tall, calm person who wore her hair in braids, an activist. Interesting. I had other things in mind. The lay of the land. I had a clear goal in mind. My family was entangled with this town and the forest. I had to uncover my roots. Anya went with me. So I can visit either the Białowieża town, the town my ancestors lived in, or the forest I dreamed about. And there are also this is the palace park, apparently, and there are some roads that are named, but nothing. I've never been to the Białowieża village myself in person, so I wouldn't recognize any of the streets or anything. I'm just looking if any of them have particularly ominous names or anything, but it doesn't look like it. Like, this is the new street, this is the train street, this is the border street, this is the park street, this is the settler street, this is the dough street, as in the animal dough, not the cookie dough or something. Yeah, so I guess I'll go to the town, because if I specifically want to learn about my family, then perhaps it would be best to ask around, or maybe visit local cemeteries, you know, to see if I can find the graves of my forefathers, you know, checking with the surname or something. So I'll go to the town my ancestors lived in. Serendipity. As we walked through the town, Anya nudged me and pointed at a tall, broad-shouldered, freckled guy standing at the bus stop with a lost expression on his face. I remembered his face from the pictures on social media. It was the friend who'd stood me up earlier. I guess I have a kind of a reason to get angry at him. But do I really want to start my conversation with that? I don't believe that's particularly productive. Like, okay, he stood me up, which is annoying, but it's not like I believe anger should be reserved for, you know, serious cases. If he stole from me or called me a bitch or something, then I would get angry. I guess getting stood up is annoying, but it's not like I traveled to this place specifically for him. I was in the vicinity anyway. It's not that big of a hassle, so I guess I just greeted him. And apparently he's neutral towards me. Bartek? I asked, getting his attention. Maia, what are you doing here? He blurted with a surprise when he saw me. I was sure you were coming on a later bath. We started walking and talking. His accent was broad and East European. Now, flooding him with questions is kind of weird. Like, it's totally understandable, but I feel like that would be off-putting if that's the first thing you did. Again, I don't quite understand. Those are not choices. Those are not actions. Those are, like, Anya liked him is an observation, and I caught him looking at me is an observation as well. So again, I could totally see all of those being, you know, true at the same time. But I guess it's more a question of which one of those do I concentrate on the most. So I guess if I caught him looking at me, that would be interesting, because I assume it's some kind of a peculiar look, like, right? If it wasn't, the character wouldn't comment on that. Also, the lights are flickering, which is also kind of interesting. I caught him looking at me. He kept glancing at me out the corner of his eye. When I caught his gaze, I could swear he looked scared. We walked along the only street in the village, nearing the center, if you could call it that. Every house had a garden, and the air was dense with the fragrance of flowers. I took a deep breath. So, did you manage to trace the name I gave you? I asked. Bartek shook his head. Nothing, absolutely nothing, sorry. He was avoiding my eyes. A trickle of sweat ran down his temple. Yeah, right, he was lying straight to my face. That's what I thought, essentially, because he looks very guilty. And apparently because my rage is high, I'm very annoyed at him. What the fuck, man? I threw my arms in the air. You wrote to me a few days ago that you had something, but he just climbed up. You know what? I think you should drop it. Do I want to get angry with him? Because he's very obviously lying. That much is true. But I'm not sure if that approach will be, productive. Although I guess he's already kind of scared with me. So I guess I'll try indulging in my rage a little bit. Hopefully she doesn't kill him or something. That would be kind of horrifying. Huh. Charm, or I can try acting hurt. Like I'm trying to gauge which one of those, because I don't want to antagonize him too much. Clearly he has to have some reasons for lying to me, and before I know them, I don't want to judge him. But I guess I am hurt by the fact he's lying to me, because at the very least he could explain why he doesn't want to tell me. So I guess I did feel hurt. I stopped. I turned to Bartek and looked right into his eyes. That's a bit unfair, don't you think? I sighed. It was a long, uncomfortable ride, and I only came here because you said you had something. That's cold. Anya twisted the knife. Yeah, I guess I do totally agree with that, especially if she only came because she talked with him about the Białowieża village, and now he says he doesn't know anything. That's kind of majorly annoying, because she literally traveled half the world from the States to Poland just because she wanted to meet with him and to visit this place, and now he changes his mind and doesn't even explain himself. The game tracks your decisions on how Maia approaches problems. They will accumulate and gradually reveal what kind of person she is, deep in her heart. The story changes to reflect Maia's personality. Well, he brushed his forehead with the back of his hand. I did ask. I started with the old people here. I told them that my friend from the States was looking for her roots and wanted to know about the place her family came from. You know the drill. At first, people were very, receptive. I waited for the other shoe to drop. I don't know that expression. I imagine it's something akin... Like, I imagine from the context that this must mean, waiting for... if you received good news, then waiting for the bad news to sort of balance it out, but I didn't know that idiom. And then I mentioned your name. He shook his head. I needed a moment to calm down, and this will decrease my rage. Do I want to do that? I guess so. Two points of rage will still leave me some to act if necessary, but I will be less pissed, and therefore be able to act more calmly, in regular circumstances. I needed a moment to calm down. We walked in silence for a long time. Finally, I nodded and he continued his story. One of the old men here told me to go to hell. The other spat on the ground and his wife crossed... What? Crossed herself? Does that mean, making the sign of the cross? As in, the Christian gesture of prayer? I guess so. For a moment, he looked younger and smaller, and then my own grandmother told me to stop asking. She said something else as well. I tensed up. What? I asked. She told me to pray for you. Suddenly the sweet golden afternoon wasn't so sweet and golden anymore. So I guess the people here, maybe they don't know it directly, but they kind of knew that something was weird with my family line, and maybe they think, that my family, they were monsters. If they were werewolves, one of the women, the Bartek's grandmother told him to pray for me because maybe she thinks I'm the spawn of the devil or something, because actually in Slavic mythology I do believe that werewolves were cursed. Like it was straight up a curse upon people. So you could imagine there was something diabolical to that. That piqued my interest. I knew there was something weird and twisted connecting me and my family to the forest. I could feel a shiver run down my spine. We walked in silence, but my mind was in overdrive. People didn't want to talk, and that could only mean one thing. I was on the right track, and I get a point of willpower because I gained a piece of important information about my family, I guess. Hint, people were scared of my family, and my pulse quickened and I tensed up like a hound that smelled blood. I was on the right track. Every time you learn or do something significant that brings you closer to your goal, you regain willpower. I was ready to see some sights. Time to see the sights, I nodded at Bartek. Show me everything this place has to offer. We walked through the village, bathed in the sharp rays of the summer sun. It was a lazy afternoon, disturbed only by the occasional passing car throwing up clouds of dust that hung in the air long after the vehicle was gone. Anya was walking close to Bartek, asking him about every little detail in the village. People were relaxing or working in their yards, dogs were barking, and every cat we passed froze to look at us. People went about their day, though, giving us a wary stares from time to time. Why the stares? Would I be more concerned about people or about cats? I guess about people, because even though the Białowieża village presumably isn't that much of a big tourist location in itself, the fact that it's borders the national park must mean that there are quite a few visitors there anyway. So why are they staring at me in particular? Don't people like strangers here? I asked, still feeling the angry gaze of some random woman on my back. What's everyone's deal? Bartek sighed. They don't, he admitted. Do I want to lose rage? I guess I do. I'm not sure if he's telling the truth, to be honest. Maybe they just don't like me in particular, because they clearly didn't like my family. If they don't like people just because they're from abroad, then I do believe they kind of are xenophobic jerks. But mostly I guess I'm curious why. And this will help me keep my rage balanced as well. Yeah, I was curious why. Why? I asked candidly. It's complicated. Bartek scratched his neck, embarrassed by the topic. There's a small conflict around the forest, and it's attracting some weird people. Activists, reporters, bored rich kids. He said as though his dad didn't own multiple businesses. People like that. And they're getting on the locals' nerves. Ah, right. Because I guess this game is kind of drawing on actual events, like real-life events, because there have been, from around, 2016 onwards, there have been a lot of controversies about logging in Białowieża, which obviously is a national park. You shouldn't be able to log down the trees there, but it was just justified with the goal of containing the infestation of what are they called? Those little bugs that eat wood. It's korniki in Polish, but I don't know the English word. But basically, the logging was being explained as a sort of preemptive action to contain the spread of those bugs, but it didn't. It was kind of fishy, and there was a lot of controversy on both sides. There were a lot of activists, ecologists, and such protesting there. And there was a lot of investigation into the exact, connections between the logging, the government, and the people that were into it, where the money sort of flowed from this. So I guess this game is kind of partially based on that, which is interesting. I noticed Anya frowning. Ah, because she's an activist, right? Anya looked skeptical. I looked the conflict up online, she said, and it didn't look small. It looked pretty important, actually. For a moment, Bartek looked like he was lost for words. Well, you're not one of those crazies, and you're like almost local, he smiled. So, what would you like to see in the village of your ancestors? He spread his arms as if to show me all the splendor of the village that it had to offer. What do you suggest? The village. Cats were watching my every move as we walked along the empty streets. Okay, I would definitely like to visit the cemetery. It seems like an obvious place to visit. Old cemetery, family graves, mysteries of the past. Yeah, let's go. Matters of the soul. So, we have quite a few churches over here, Bartek explained as we walked down the road. 2 Orthodox, 1 Catholic, and even a Baptist church, he said, as though it were something uncommon. Seems like a lot of churches. It actually isn't. Like, there is a huge amount of churches in Poland, but not so many denominations. Like, Poland is overwhelmingly Catholic. So I guess it is a little, out of the ordinary to have multiple denominations. Because, although I guess I never really looked that much into it, and I'm pretty sure in major cities you would find different denominations to just Catholic if you were looking for them. But I'm not religious myself. I haven't been for a long time, so I'm not paying that much attention. Was there a synagogue? I guess that's also an interesting question, because that will probably get into the history of the Jewish faith on the Polish soil, and with that you cannot really talk about that without mentioning the Holocaust, and the Second World War in general. So that might uncover some interesting answers. So I guess I'll choose that. Was there a synagogue? And the synagogue, I knew that part of my mom's family was Jewish. He shifted his weight uncomfortably. There aren't any Jews here anymore. Yeah, right. Any Lutheran churches? I don't think so. Bartek shook his head as he led us to a small wooden church surrounded by a cemetery. Anyway, even though we have all those churches, there's only one cemetery. The church was Orthodox, but the graves was a mishmash of styles and faiths. Catholic, Orthodox, atheist, everyone resting together. Bartek looked like he didn't approve. Interesting. Interesting. There was something poetic about it. I guess there is. It's a very cliche statement at this point, because it has been repeated so many times. But there still is something poetic in the fact that after we die, death is like the final equalizer. It doesn't really matter what faith you were. You still end up dead and rotting in the ground in the end, and there isn't much difference. It's not like the bodies of Catholics get raptured into heaven in a golden mist or whatever. Like, no matter what you believed in life, once you're dead, you're dead. But apparently this place reminds her of the forest, which is interesting. So maybe I would like to explore that a little bit. Yeah, this place reminded me of a forest. Oh, a forest. Maybe a forest of crosses or something. I thought she was talking specifically about Białowieża. It's like in the forest, I said, looking at the spruces growing among the graves. It's full of death. What's fallen stays where it fell. There's all kinds of trees, bushes and animals, and life is growing out of it all. Bartek didn't look convinced. Yeah, maybe. He looked at the cemetery, and for a moment he seemed lost in thoughts. All of my family lies here, he said. I mean the ones that are dead. Yeah, sure. But I surely needed that qualifier. Hey, what do you think? What do you think happens when you die? I personally believe that only memory remains. I don't believe in any kind of afterlife, and I believe in ghosts even less. Although, funnily enough, ghosts are actually 100% real in this universe, but my character doesn't know that at this point. So I guess I'll state my actual real life opinion, which is that only memory remained. I was raised an atheist, because of my mom, so I don't think anything happens. You just lose consciousness, your body decays. I looked at him. But the things you've done are remembered and live on. Bartek winced. Well, maybe, he mumbled. He looked away over the cemetery fence. Well, anyway, that's it. The spiritual heart of Białowieża. We can go see something else if you like. So that's where we stood. I wanted to go in. He didn't want me to. So I can get angry at him, but I don't think that would amount to much. I could try to defuse the situation, but that would spend my last willpower point. Because I only have one for now, so I guess I'll go with the balanced approach and just get into the cemetery and try to look for the graves of my family. If he has a problem, he should sort of speak out. I do believe that, because I don't have a problem with him. At least it doesn't seem so. I just went in. Are you kidding me? I didn't come here to look at something. I come to look for something, I said, opening the gate. Bartek shifted uncomfortably. I don't know if that's a good idea. He's clearly hiding something, that much is true. You found it, my family's graves. Maybe? So what are you waiting for? Anya smiled at him. He mumbled something and led us through the labyrinth of graves to the far end of a cemetery. We continued. The walkways were narrow, and I could tell Bartek was having a hard time finding the way. It wasn't that he was stalling, he genuinely wasn't sure where to go, especially when we got to the older part of the cemetery. At some point, we saw a woman, tall, broad-shouldered and long-legged. Everyone is broad-shouldered here. Like, this exact phrase has been used to describe Anya, Bartek, and now this woman. But anyway, she was tall, broad-shouldered and long-legged, with grey dreadlocks pinned to the crown of her head. She must have been in her late 40s or early 50s. She was marching through the walkways with fury in her eyes. And Bartek quickly stepped between the graves to get out of her way. Do I want to... is she angry at me? Does she know who I am? I guess that might be interesting Although, what's the difference between... I guess walking on is directly crashing into her, whereas just not moving is sort of forcing her to choose if she will stray from her path or hit me. But that might lead to a confrontation, which would be interesting, just to learn, what's her problem, if it's with me or not. Or I can lose a point of rage to retreat. I do want a confrontation, just to learn what it's about, so I didn't move. I didn't seem I didn't see any reason to move out of someone's way, so I didn't. Are you lost? Asked the woman in Polish, looking at me with surprising concern. So apparently Maia does understand Polish, which is good to know. By the way, are you lost in Polish would be zgubiłaś się? Just if you're curious, how would it sound? Polish is a gendered language, so it would sound different if I was a man, because I'm a woman, it would be zgubiłaś się, but if I was a man, it would be zgubiłeś się. But that doesn't probably matter for you. I guess I can ask her for directions. Like, she's looking at me with surprising concern. So maybe she isn't angry at me after all. And what harm is there in asking? Like, worst case scenario, she just won't respond. So I asked her for directions. Actually, I'm looking for an old grave. My family lived here and... What's the name? Borodycz, I answered with a perfect Polish accent. Ah, so it's a little bit different even than I thought. There isn't an E and I here, but a Y. Young Borodyczówna. She used an antiquated feminine form of the name. She shook her head. I'm just coming back from there. Go to the end of here, turn left, and go to the far corner of the wall. She looked at me in a funny way. I guess I should thank her. She was pretty helpful. Yeah, I thanked her. Oh, thank you. Bartek didn't seem to know the way. I think it was the only then that she noticed him. Oh, it's you, she said with barely hidden disdain. Well, I'd better be going. See you around, I guess. With that she left, followed by Bartek's hostile gaze. Yeah, I'll ask. I'll bite. That's pretty interesting to see that they clearly don't like each other. I asked Bartek about her. Who was that? I asked, watching the woman leave. Bartek winced. Oh, that's just Olga. She's a local activist. She left Białowieża when she was 18 or something, and returned a few years later with the notion that she was going to change this place. We continued to the far corner of the cemetery. There, seemingly frozen and covered in moss, was a lonely grave. It was damaged. So did somebody desecrate my grave? Yeah, right. The tombstone was broken deliberately. Someone had obviously smashed it with a hammer. The name was half erased. The plaque was also damaged. Somebody had tried to scratch out the name, but the letters were still visible. So clearly my family is pretty hated in these parts. There was a circle around the grave. There was a circle of coarse salt around the grave. I'm sorry, Bartek sighed. I didn't want you to see that. So the circle of salt is a warding circle, you know, for evil spirits. It's like a folkloric tradition. I'm not sure if it's widespread or if it's specifically Slavic, but you could, historically, folklorically speaking, a circle of salt could be used to ward off, evil creatures, like spirits or monsters or something. So I guess they must know, again, as I said before, they must know that my family, maybe they don't know that we were werewolves specifically, but they must know that there was something wrong with us, that we were not entirely human. So they like try to ward off evil by circling the grave with salt. That's kind of cool. If I find any more information about that custom, I'll try to put that in the description. Actually, I'm curious myself now if it's specifically, Slavic custom or does it originally originate from some other part of Europe, and it's also just simply also known here. Now, I looked around carefully. That would lose a point of willpower, but I believe that might be important to learn something more. So, I guess I will look around carefully. I looked at the scene. The circle around the grave was broken, and the disturbed soil where someone had kicked the salt was fresh away. No, kicked the salt away was fresh. Ah, so somebody has broken the circle. As if he or she wanted whatever that there was in the grave to sort of be able to get out or something. You know, they wanted to break the seal. But now I have 0 willpower again, so what was going on? I felt overwhelmed and confused. What was going on here? I could get angry, but I don't even know who am I getting angry at the moment. Was Olga part of it? I guess I can ask Bartek. Olga was here just before us. She must have noticed the salt and the broken tombstone. Was she the one who broke the circle? Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Anya squatted and looked at the plaque. I can't read it. The letters are all wrong. She glanced at Bartek. Is it Russian? Belarusian. Same letters, different language, he explained. There were a lot of them here before the war. Oh, is he like a nationalist? Like, does he hate Belarusians? Because there's clearly an emphasis on the word them here. I looked at Bartek, hoping for some context. Bartek put his hands in his pockets. So, you don't know anything about your dad's side of the family. Whatever happened at least 70 years ago, and someone still remembers. Damn it, because my willpower is impaired. I guess I'm not that adapted at looking around. Like, she just wants to go away and rest. I guess he has a point. Like, I would like to stay a little bit more, so I'll choose that just because it might lead to me discovering something more. I don't know them. My mom left my dad when I was just a kid, so I don't remember much, I admitted. And she kept me away from them. She doesn't even know I'm here. I didn't tell her that I was visiting Białowieża. Maybe he was abusive, Anya said carefully. Perhaps she wanted to protect you. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's kind of my theory as well, but my theory is specifically tied with the fact that my father was a werewolf, so he wasn't, like, I don't necessarily believe that he was abusive just because he was a dick. I believe that he might have been abusive because of the rage, because that's basically how rage works, and that's why werewolf families are seldom happy, because werewolves have this simmering rage in them, and they can quite easily be provoked to anger, over emotional turmoil. I looked at the grave. For the last time. My family's name looks strange, written in the unfamiliar Belarusian letters. As we were leaving, I was thinking, I was onto something. My family grave had been vandalized. There was something unnatural about my family, and me coming to Białowieża has stirred all demons. I just had to find out what my ancestors were doing here, who they were. With that thought, I left the cemetery. The day was hot and beautiful, yet I couldn't stop thinking about the devastated grave. I guess I'm here, so I'll go here and then here, assuming the game will allow me to visit all of the places. But I'm not sure what would I look for in the railway. Excuse me, I have to pause for a second, be right back. Okay, I'm back, so I guess I'll go to the village center, and then, if the game allows me, I'll go to the abandoned railway as well, because it's sort of naturally lined up. New friends, hidden tensions. A bird of many colors. This is such a nice village, exclaimed Anya as we walked along the quiet street. Nothing moved. The heat was stifling. And the village was really quaint, apparently. It's quaint, I carefully admitted. It's a nice way of saying it's a shithole. Bartek made a disgusted face, and we burst out laughing. I was thirsty. Let's go get something to drink, I proposed. I'm parched. The local store was a large mini-mart with all kinds of goods, from beer and vegetables to notebooks and pens. There was a bench near the entrance, and on it were a few local drunks. I prepared myself for a confrontation, but nothing happened. They threw me an apprising glance, murmured something, and let us be. I'm not going to antagonize them. I don't think that serves any particular purpose, and it's not like they did anything. Like, sure, they are kind of creepy. I do understand, getting getting gazed at. What's the word? Getting, like, whenever men look at women in a particular way, as it said here, apprising glance. I do believe that's pretty creepy and annoying and uncomfortable, but I don't think annoying them in return would accomplish much. So I guess I'm just mostly interested in seeing if they are dangerous, so I assessed the threat. They are drunk and no threat, I said, assessing the situation. We can always walk away, and if they try to stop us, all it takes is a firm push, 1 or 2 kicks, and then we can make a run for it. Why do you even have a plan for something like that? Anya shook her head in disbelief. My stepdad sent me to a self-defense course when I was 12, I shrugged, to help me with my anger management issues. It's interesting, because, as I said before, Garu werewolves have a huge, they have a huge problem with actually fitting in with human society, because compared to regular people, they get angry really easily and with often murderous effects. We spent some time inside browsing the Latvian, Lithuanian and Belarusian goods. Why was there almost nothing Polish here? And who in their right mind drinks coriander soda? What? I don't know that word. Coriander? Coriander? I don't know what that means. I was putting the soda back on the shelf when we heard a commotion coming from outside. Actually, why are there no Polish goods here indeed? Not sure, but maybe that will be elaborated upon. There are loud voices coming from outside. Some slurs, some curses, and a clear, mockingly polite, "I'm so sorry, darlings. I don't understand. Do you like my skirt?" Ah, fuck, Bartek murmured under his breath. I guess I looked outside. I'm not going to go in, kicking and screaming from the... Especially because it seems that the woman, I assume that's a woman, is clearly having some, it's a mockingly polite tone, so I assume she's having some fun at their expense and she's not being overly threatened by them. I looked outside. There was someone standing next to the drunkard's bench. They were definitely not local. The person was old, not helpless granny old, but old, with deep wrinkles and a narrow mouth. They had the unisex grace of a tired, heroin-preserved rockman. Their shoulder-length, disheveled hair completed the look. And she has a she, or I'm not even sure. The game specifically tells me that they have a unisex grace, so I'm not even sure if that's a man or she looks more like a woman, but I'm not sure. But he, she, they have a like a choker with spikes. To be honest, I don't really dig that style, so I'm going to say they looked out of place. They looked like someone had teleported them from a different planet. They had a clean shave and eyes highlighted with eyeliner. Their nails were painted in bright blue. They wore heavy army boots, an outrageously red skirt, tank top, and a lot of leather jewelry. On their back there were a lot of pins, all kinds of LGBTQA flags, anarchist and pacifist symbols, and I think some German band stripes. I guess I'll ask her or him or they. I guess the game is using they, so I probably should as well, unless at least until the person clearly introduces themselves and introduces the way they would like to be referred to. So I mostly want to approach them to ask, if they're okay. So I approach the foreigner. I smiled and, ignoring the man, I approached the foreigner. "Hi, I'm Maia. I just got here," I said. They looked at me with a serene smile. "Nice to meet you, Maia," they said with an unmistakable German accent. "I'm Kim." I guess I will... or maybe we can just ignore them and just start talking normally. Yeah, I guess we started talking. "What brings you here?" I asked. "In Białowieża, I mean." "I came to see the forest and to protect it." They sounded deadly serious. "Me and my friends heard about what's happening here, and we decided to come and help." The men on the bench were looking at us grimly. "Hey," somebody said suddenly from behind our backs. Kim smiled, and the man on the bench stiffened. So I guess this is the new person that's approaching. I turned around. The woman approaching us had the longest, thickest braids I'd ever seen, as thick as my arm. There was something faintly Asian about her facial features, and the man on the bench looked at her with deference. "You should stop drinking that moonshine. It makes you pick fights you can't win." She looked ferocious. Is she a werewolf as well, I wonder? Oh, that's interesting. I only just noticed there's an outline of another face, some kind of a bearded man. I don't really want to fight them, so I will choose that. She looked ferocious. And the drunks started explaining themselves. "But look at this, Elżunia," said one of them, gesturing towards us. "For the last fucking time, the name is Lisa." She pronounced it Lisa. It's not really interesting, because Elżunia is a diminutive of Elżbieta, which in itself is a Polish version of the name Elizabeth. So I guess you could shorten, you not only could, I guess Lisa is straight up kind of a diminutive of Elizabeth, I guess, because what other name would it come from? I never really thought about it. But anyway, she pronounced it Lisa, and this is my friend. You're to leave them alone, got it? Her Polish sounded weird, more melodic, or maybe mellower, even when she cursed. The drunkards mumbled and went back to drinking. "Thanks, Lisa," or Lisa, Kim said in English. "You shouldn't have." "Oh, but I wanted to." How did she command so much respect? Why did they listen to you? I asked. She turned to me and shrugged with just a hint of smile. Oh, they have their reasons. She looked me up and down. And who would you be? This is Maia, smiled Kim. She's not from here. Oh, are you here to protest the logging? She raised her eyebrows. Or just a tourist? Okay, I guess this isn't too great of a place to stop, but this episode has been long enough, so... I'll play a little bit more, actually. I'll try to stop in a more natural place. Why were they logging in a national park? Wait, isn't this place like a national park? I asked. Why are they logging here? You'd think they leave the oldest forest on the continent, the beating heart of it alone, wouldn't you? She looked at me with a grim expression. There's illegal logging here, Anya chopped in. Wood is money, and there's plenty of wood in this forest. Suddenly a feeling rushed over me. Now, as much as I don't really want to increase my rage, I feel like if I wasn't burning with anger at the thought of there being logging in a primordial forest, I wouldn't be werewolfing, right? So I guess I was burning. I couldn't see the forest from here, but suddenly I felt very aware of its presence. I also felt something else deep in my stomach, spreading through my veins. Anger, like a wave of heat coming from the heart of the dark, ancient forest. A word appeared in my mind, a strange one that was neither Polish nor English. Kalgira. I don't know that word, actually. Lisa looked me in the eyes and spat on the ground. I'd eat those greedy bastards alive. I noticed Kim watching me. I felt like I was being watched, and when I looked up, I saw Kim observing me with a curious expression. They were hiding something. I looked at them and realized they were much more than they first seemed. Under their colorful attire lurked something else, something primal. Why are you looking at me like that? I asked. I know you have strange dreams. They whispered. I suspect the forest is reaching out to you. They leaned closer to me. It runs in your blood. The words were like a punch to the gut. Trust me, I know. So I guess they must be werewolves as well, because they are specifically described as primal. Again, I'm going to have impaired willpower, but I feel like getting the answer to the question, who was I, is pretty important, so I'm going to choose that. Who was I? Who am I? I asked quietly. You see things as they are, they said, looking me in the eyes. You'll figure it out. Suddenly I felt confident. I met someone who knew about my dreams. I wasn't making that up. There was something strange in my family history, and there were people who knew what was going on. Before I could ask more, Anya and Bartek approached, and Kim shook their head, silencing me. Because they don't want to pierce the veil, because basically the werewolves hide their existence from regular people, much as vampires do. Vampires call it the masquerade, and werewolves, Garu, they call it the veil. Meet us tomorrow at the logging site. They blew me a kiss, put their arm around Lisa and walked away. We decided to leave as well. The village. I kept looking over my shoulder, but no one was following us. Okay, so this is, on the other hand, a very decent place to end. So that's all for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!